Dr. Vivek Gupta is currently working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Civil Engineering at Thapar Institute of Engineering Technology. He completed his Masters from Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, and Doctorate from Indian National Institute of Technology, Indore. He has a diversified background and a trio of academia, industry, and research experience in the areas of pavement and building materials, waste characterization and their utilization in construction materials, and management of construction projects. He has published several journal articles, including in reputed SCI journals like Journal of Cleaner Production, Resource Conservation and Recycling, and Construction Building Materials. I'm sure his expertise will be a great beneficial to all the participants. With this short introduction, I will like to invite Mr. Vivek, Dr. Vivek for his session.
So, thank you for the nice introduction. I so thankful for this wonderful opportunity for sharing my experiences on sustainable unfired bricks. So, we will briefly cover the brief overview of the unfired bricks, and then we will go for the laboratory demonstration of the product development. So, I will, in today's presentation, I will just cover the brief overview. Then I will introduce you with the challenges. Mainly, I will cover the industrial challenges, what we are facing in the unfired brick industries. Then I will cover some of our works we have carried out at IIT Indore regarding the waste characterization, some mixing strategy, then the homogeneity of mix. Then I will share that how we will reach the unique colored bilayered bricks, and then we will come to the live laboratory demonstration of the product development. So to start with, in ancient days, we were just using the sun-dried clay products for adobe bricks for our building construction purposes. And what happened in the with the centuries, like a lot of modifications have been made in the raw material and the manufacturing process to improve the performance. And it is well known that there are certain issues regarding the durability of the adobe blocks. So what we have done, we have just improved the manufacturing process, and we just reach out to the fired clay products in the modern days. So in this particular process, what happened, somehow we have lost the sustainability. So this is the brief about the fired bricks, how we prepare the fired bricks. We typically use the raw materials like the soil. We use the coal dust in the soil to which act as an internal fuel for the fired bricks. Then we also use the wooden dust to help in the demolding. Like what happened in the earlier days, we used to have the casting of the bricks manually by the helpers, but nowadays we have installed the machines, and now we demold the clay bricks from the machines, and we just cast them similar to the unfired bricks. So like the clay material is very sticky in nature, and it is difficult to demold instantly from the machines, so we use the wooden dust to help in the demolding. Also, we have used the many of the waste like the agriculture crop waste, stone dust. For the colors, we also use the red surki and the stone mining waste for a better color, because the aesthetics is one of the big challenges in the brick industry. So then how we manufacture this? So there are four steps mainly in the production of the fired bricks. One is the processing of the raw soil. First of all, what we earlier days, what we do, we just like the audio is not. Am I clear, Sanchit?
Yes, sir. It's clear, both audio and video.
Is someone had messaged that no audio?
So maybe they are having connectivity on their
Okay.
side.
Okay. So in the manufacturing process, there are four major steps in the fired clay bricks. One is the processing of raw soil. So what we do in previous time, like we just uh, in general term, we say it the clean. So we just dig out the soil nearby the clean and just prepare the bricks. But with the timing, there are scarcity of the soil after 20-30 years nearby in nearby area of the clean. So what we do now, we just purchase the soil from the nearby farms or a little far distance, and this transfer of the soil from one place to another place somehow it sacrifices the sustainability due to the transportation emission. Then the second thing is whenever we are not getting the good quality of soil, we have to just process them. So we have to just remove the coarse particles. In general term, we say concord. So by manually or by machines, we used to process those raw soils. Once the soil is clean, then we just add the sufficient water and we try to make for the soil of a particular consistency, and then we cast them in a particular molds. What we in earlier days, what we do, we just put them in the sunlight for 14 to 15 days, and then we generally use them directly. But nowadays we just fire them and we enhance their durability. So what happened when we put into the fire, there is a vitrification process, and then due to the vitrification, somehow the such mineral formation happened, which gives the better durability to the bricks. So for that, the dried bricks from the sunlight, we used to load them in the kiln for the firing, and then after the firing, we used to stack them and arrange them in a particular manner. So this is the complete process for the fired bricks, and it takes almost 3 months for the manufacturing. So this is a very huge challenge. Like what happened when we put it in the um sunlight drying. So there is a rain and other environmental constraints. So which actually restricts the manufacturing for almost 3 to 4 months, and hardly we can say the effective cycles we can have for only 6 months. So this is the typical fired bricks, and the production cycle is almost 3 months. These are the different issues what we are facing with the fired bricks. Like it is a medium to high energy intensive industry. Then the manufacturing process is highly polluting the environment. Then it is a very highly labor dependent. Like in earlier days, we used to cast them in molds manually, but nowadays we have partially replaced that process from the machines. We are casting them through the machines, but still it is a labor intensive industry, and the from the drying area to the firing, their arrangement in the kiln, that complete process is still manual. So then there is a disposal issue of the fire bricks, like the bricks which are in the mid side of the kiln, they are rich in the soluble chrome and the absorbed aromatic carbons. So we have that we cannot dispose them directly in the environment. So these are the different challenges related to fired bricks. Then what happened in this particular process, what I have explained in the earlier slide, like from the sun-dried clay bricks to we have reached to the fired clay bricks. And what happened, the actually the low embodied energy and low embodied carbon product, we converted them into the high energy, high embodied energy and high embodied carbon product. So somehow we have sacrificed the sustainability. So the question for the researchers was to how to bring the sustainability back. So what the researchers have done in the previous decades, they have proposed a manufacturing process which is unfired. So the unfired brick manufacturing process has been suggested by the many researchers. So to bring the sustainability back. So can we really prepare the sustainable bricks without firing? So yes, in current markets we have both types of products. One is the fired bricks and the unfired bricks. So the popular product in the fired bricks is the red clay bricks, and the unfired bricks we usually see in the market the fly ash bricks. So these are the two major products which we can easily find in the market nowadays. So which are the other recommended sustainable products as per the NBC guidelines? So National Building Code of India, which is released in 2016, that has recommended the following products as a sustainable alternative. So you will notice that the burnt clay fly ash bricks is still considered as a sustainable masonry product. However, it is a very intensive industry from the point of view of embodied carbon and embodied energy. But still, if we are replacing the fly ash to a certain percentage, it is considered as a sustainable alternative. Other than that, the local utilization of the waste and development of the masonry products, that is the red mud clay bricks, lato bricks, then hollow perforated bricks, low or medium fired bricks. These are all considered as a sustainable alternative suggested by the National Building Code of India in 2016. So why the unfired bricks are more sustainable and how the typical unfired bricks are manufactured. So you can easily see that the unfired bricks has the eco-friendly manufacturing process. That's why we consider them as a sustainable product. This is the main thing. The second thing is we are utilizing the waste in the unfired bricks. So that is the another advantage, the conservation of natural resources, by which we are achieving the sustainability through the unfired bricks. So these are the two things which are mainly important related to sustainability unfired bricks. So these are the unfired bricks, like typically in the market we see the fly ash bricks, and the typical raw materials are the either we use the lime or cement as a stabilizer, and then sand or stone dust as a fines, and fly ash we use generally as a filler material or the partial replacement of we can say the binder, as it is well known that the fly ash reacts with the lime and it shows the pozzolanic activity. So many of the researchers considered this as a supplementary binder in the bricks. Then what are the advantages of the unfired bricks as compared to the fired bricks? Like these are the machine manufactured bricks, and the manufacturing process is environment friendly, and the typical production cycle is 1 month. However, it depends on the weather conditions, like whenever we have the winter season, then the cycle or we can say the curing cycle a little bit larger, and whenever we have the summer season, the bricks curing season becomes a faster. However, there are no like specific research studies reported, but like I have the previous experience in the industry, so by experience I can say like the it depends on the weather conditions. The rate of strengthening of the bricks is closely related to the conditions in the weather. So, how the typical bricks are manufactured? So, I briefly tell you the manufacturing process. Although we have the laboratory session in which we will see the how the bricks can be prepared at industry. Like in the IIT Indore, we have the actual industrial plant. What we usually have in the industry, we have procured for the industrial research in our laboratory. So, we will see the demonstration at the latter part of the presentation. So this is the typical manufacturing process of the unfired bricks. Like either we use the lime as a binder or cement as a binder, and generally there are we take the lime from the industry, and produce the slag lime in situ at the industry. So what we have in the laboratory, we generally use the a drum, which a roller which has two drum in the pan mixture. So the first step is the grinding of the wet lime. Once the lime is grinded properly, then in the second step we add the fly ash, stone dust, and some additional water. This is the second step, but when we are using the cement as a binder, the dry blending of fly ash, stone dust, and cement are mixed together, and then at the second step we add the required amount of water. But still there are no so much clarity about the mixing sequence, so we have worked on the particular only on the mixing sequence, like how to mix the materials to get the better performance characteristics. So in the third, we will see that particular work in the later slides. So in the step 3, what we do, that particular mix is transferred to the molds for the compaction through the conveyor belt, and then we just compact them to the hydraulic machines. There are multiple types of machines available in market. Like one is the top press machine in the where the punch is at the top side of the uh, machine line, and then there are some bottom press machines. Also there are some rotary type of machines are also available in the market. So all are based on the compression technology, and some of the machines we also have the vibration. So that we like it depends on the manufacturer of the machine. There are different models available in the market, and once we compress the machine, we just put them for the drying for 24 days in general. And if we have the weather conditions, like the bricks are not drying in one day, then in the moist conditions we it may go to 2 to 3 days, or in some cases up to 7 days also. So once the bricks are getting dried, then we just shift them to the curing area, and then we start them water sprinkling curing. And after a month, typically we can just dispatch them for the utilization. But depending on the weather, it may extend to the 45 to 60 days, or sometime to 90 days also. But after 3 months, it almost achieved the complete strength. So what is our target? Basically, like in the drying area, we want to achieve a particular early age strength, so that we can handle them and we can stack them up to a certain height. And in the final curing, we just reach to a sufficient strength, so that we can dispatch for the utilization. Still, like in the case of lime, the many of the researchers have reported that the lime and fly ash gains the strength up to 1 year. So it's not like that we have achieved the complete strength, but majority of part we have achieved before the dispatch of the material. So then these are the key aspects of the manufacturing of unfired bricks. Like many of the researchers have used the different waste, but still the industrial scale implementation is less. So what are the key aspects related to manufacturing of unfired bricks? So this I have just included in this slide. So first of all is the raw material characterization. Whenever you are utilizing the waste, like if you consider the fly ash bricks, so generally we are using the waste lime, then waste fly ash, and then the stone dust. All are the known manufactured materials. What I mean from the known manufactured materials, like the if you will see the cement, so cement is manufactured according to a particular standard. But when you will go for the stone dust, or fly ash, or you can say the the lime, so those are not so standard in the industry. Like the commercial grade materials are available in the market, but the quality is not so constant. or we can say the not the big players or the quality controlled materials are available in these materials. So there is a we can say the whenever we are incorporating any waste, there is a challenge to characterize as a raw material. The second thing, when we go for the manufacturing, like once the raw material has been procured to the industry, then these are the three important aspects for which we have to look after. One is the design mix. The design mix is considered, we can say, three parts. One is the what should be the binder quantity, then what should be the mixed proportions, like there are multiple ingredients like the fly ash, then stone dust, and then lime. So what are the internal proportions, dry proportions we can have, then the liquid content. So liquid content is also very important. We will see that we have worked on the particular liquid content in the mixing sequence. We will see in the upcoming slides. Then second thing is the mixing strategy. Like you will see in the literature, like many people have worked on the design mix, but very less literature is available on the mixing strategy and the compaction strategy. In the mixing strategy, we can consider the three parts. One is the mixing sequence, like if there are multiple ingredients, then what should be the sequence to achieve the better performance. Then what should be the mixing time, and what should be the mixing equipment. So these are the three important things in the mixing strategy. Then when we consider the compaction strategy, so there are two three types of technology. One is the vibration, another is the compression, and sometimes we just put them like in the concrete. If you are familiar with that, the self compacting concrete is very trendy nowadays. So these are the three compaction strategy we generally use in the bricks: the vibration, compression, and the self compaction. So after these, once we reach to the green bricks or blocks, then we have to choose the curing techniques. And in the curing techniques, these are the three important things. One is the curing time, one another is the curing medium, the air, water, or moist, what should be the environment where we are putting them for the curing, and then the curing parameters like the temperature, pressure, or humidity. So if you will see any research related to unfired bricks, you can characterize that particular research in these things. Like if you will see that the curing at a elevated temperature, and if there is a high moist conditions, then you will say that it is a steam curing. If you will go for the elevated pressure, then you will say it is a autoclaved curing. So these are the different curing techniques we just design for the bricks or blocks to achieve the there are only two targets. One target is the achieve a sufficient early age strength, so that in the different curing phase we can handle the bricks without so much breakage. And the second thing is we can achieve the sufficient strength which is required for the necessary dispatch. So we have to design the curing techniques according to these requirements. So once the curing techniques are selected, then the final product is ready, like hardened product is available. Then once we achieve the hardened product, we go for a technical check for the physical properties, mechanical properties, and durabilities. And then from the manufacturing or industrial point of view, we go for the self check like the cost, production cycle, product handling, and the social acceptance. So social acceptance is also very critical. Like suppose we have created some unique product, and if we are not satisfying the expectation of the end user, then somehow we have lagged in our research goals, because ultimately the product what we have developed, it should be used by the end user. So this is the overall aspects. Like if whenever we have to incorporate any waste, we have to see like what amount we can incorporate in the design mix, what are the different strategy we have to select to incorporate that particular waste in the bricks. Then what are the different techniques for the compaction we should use to handle that particular waste in the bricks, and then the curing techniques and technical check and the cell check. So this is the complete aspects related to manufacturing of unfired bricks. And once we achieve this, then it can be accepted for the industrial production. So the letter details we have published in the review paper in the construction and building materials. So you can see the details. If you want to go into the deep, then you can refer our article, a state of the art review to enhance the industrial scale waste utilization in the unfired bricks. So then these are the industrial challenges, like we want to incorporate the waste, but it is not like uh, although we suppose some researchers have published the technical feasibility of that particular waste, still we are not able to utilize that particular waste at the mass scale in the industry. So the reason behind this, like suppose a particular researchers have worked on the characteristics of waste and the utilization of that particular waste in some US or UK. So the characteristics of waste in that particular demographic conditions may differ from there to in India or for other country. So the technical feasibility or assessment of the local waste material is very important. Like we cannot directly implement the research outcomes of any demographic location as it is to the other location, because the waste are highly dynamic in the characteristics, and we will see in the upcoming slide like how the why there is a difference in the characteristics and how we can encounter these particular dynamic characteristics for utilization in unfired bricks. The second critical challenge is the high breakage cost due to the early age strength. You will see like if we have not designed the product for the high early age strength, then there is a high breakage cost, or and it may reach up to the 10%. Although like right nowadays the manufacturers are recycling the early age bricks or blocks into the like they are processing those bricks through the jaw crusher, and they are using as a raw material, but still they are losing the binder properties. Like they can recycle them as a fine aggregate, but the binder quantity what we are incorporating in the bricks almost of 1 rupees, and the labor cost what that particular brick has incorporated, we are not able to get that particular benefit. So this is the one of the critical issue related to unfired brick manufacturing industry. Then the high working capital requirement due to the long production cycle. Although we have reduced the production cycle from 3 months, which is in the case of the unfired bricks, now we are producing it in the 1 month, but still it is a very like long cycle. And in the winters it may go up to the 2 to 3 months. So if we a manufacturer is producing 1 lakh bricks per month, so for the 3 months, if he has to stock almost 90 lakhs bricks, and that require a huge like the space or the land cost is very high for set up those uninterrupted industrial production. So that is a big challenge. So what we are trying to reduce it from the 1 month to the like the 7 days. Like from the incoming raw material, we want to just dispatch our material within the period of 7 days. So we have tried that particular thing also at IIT Indore. Then the economic feasibility comparison incorporating the different waste. This is also a very significant aspect. Like the every waste has like what we generally consider in our research, the waste is available free of cost. But this is only from the point of view of research. Whenever we are procuring that particular waste to the industry, then there is a procurement cost associated with this. So suppose if we are producing the some bricks in the Indore or MP, and we are procuring our waste from the Rajasthan, so then there will be a significant cost associated with that, because like for other industry it is not so big. We can procure the material within 1 rupee per kg, but as you are aware, the cost of the bricks is like 3 rupees or 4 rupees, and the weight of the bricks is 3 kg. So almost we are selling the ready to use bricks in the rate of rupees 1 kg uh, per kg. Okay, so if we will see the per kg cost of the brick, it is very less. So the cost of waste is also very important. So rather than transporting the waste from a different source, or we can say the distant source, we have to use the local waste in the bricks to get the sustainability. Then these are the other aspects, like the improper mixing is a huge challenge. Like we generally mix the mixing pen mixer, and if you will cut the cross section, you can see in this particular picture there are many unhydrated lime particles, or we can say unmixed particles of the lime you can see. So this is one of the challenges. Then the optimization of manufacturing aspects, like the mixing proportions, using the different waste mixing strategy, casting methods, and curing conditions. There is a huge scope of research in these particular areas. Then the performance assessment of waste incorporated products, like the mechanical and durability aspects. And then the finally the public awareness and the technical support to the manufacturers to increase the acceptance of the waste incorporated products. Like what I have explained in the earlier slide, like once we develop the product, it is also very significant, like we have to do the public sessions to aware them about the characteristics of the waste incorporated products and the advantages of the waste incorporated products, so that the manufacturer can produce them and the production can be consumed very easily in the market. So how do these deal with these challenges, maintaining the sustainability of unfired bricks? So these are the some of the solutions or strategy by which we can enhance the sustainability of unfired bricks. One is the maximize the use of the waste material as ingredients. Like it is not like we are getting very good performance, let's say 30% of fly ash, and we can say that it is sustainable. If we can further enhance the utilization of fly ash, we should do that, and we should maximize the use of the waste material as the ingredients. So then we have to select the best stabilization technology. It's not like we are getting the cement or lime as a low cost. We can just use them. If we are getting the other waste for the stabilization, like the phosphogypsum or the other alternative waste binder, we should use them, and we should incorporate maximum amount of waste using those particular stabilization technologies. Then use of the local waste material rather than the transporting the waste material from the distant source, that can be one of the strategy to achieve the sustainability of unfired bricks. Then the use of efficient mixing strategies, efficient casting methods, efficient curing strategies, that can another strategies to enhance the sustainability of unfired bricks. And a very important thing is the preparation of local maps for of industrial and domestic waste for effective utilization. That is a very key aspects. Like let's say we have proposed the uh, like utilization of local waste material, but industry don't have the data related to local maps of the industrial and domestic waste. So it is also a constraint for the industries to implement the industrial scale implementation of the waste. So this also we have to focus on this particular aspect. So these are the various ways attempted to incorporate in the unfired bricks. One is the rice husk you have seen, and the researchers have worked on the rice husk ash, then the metacholine, fly ash. Similarly, from biobriquette, majority of local industries, they either use the wood, or they use the biobriquette or the coal for their local fuels in the boilers. So from the bio bracket, you will get the bio bracket ash, then the copper mine tailing, ceramic tiles. So many ways the researchers have worked on, but still the what I explained in the previous slides, the still the industrial scale implementation is very less. So the people have worked on the recycled paper mill residue, then phosphogypsum, pond ash, quarry dust, crumb rubber, brick dust waste, then cement clean dust, raw boiler ash, ground boiler ash, then GGBS. So we will, when we will analyze the literature, you will see that different types of ashes are mainly attempted to utilize either in processed or unprocessed form, or we can say the solid powder waste. Uh, Many of the studies, they have pulverized the particular waste, and they have used as a filler or partially as a partial binder in the bricks. So how to deal with these varying characteristics of ashes? This is the very key challenge. Like we have the technical feasibility reported by many researchers. We have the waste available in the local vicinity, but still we are not able to utilize them directly as a uh, we can say as a raw material in the industry. So what are the constraints? Just to understand this in the upcoming slides, that what about the characteristics of these fly ashes, why they differ. So this I have just put in the objective form, that to establish a comprehensive methodology for characterization of industrial ashes for potential utilization in unfired bricks. Like how to characterize them so that we can get the true characteristics of those ashes. So we have published two articles from these particular objective. So these are the different key literatures you can see in the 2009 Lewandowski. They have determined the mineralogical and chemical composition of the bottom ash and the fly ash collected from Figueira power plant in Brazil. And what they observed that the ash collected at the same time with the same coal feed from the cyclone separator, mechanical hoppers, conveyors, and the bottom ash tank. These are the four different, we can say, the equipment or the process stage from which we can collect the ash from the industry, and they found to have the significantly differed in the quantitative chemical composition. So uh, from this particular we can see that how dynamic they are. Like we have the same coal feed and the ash we have collected from the same time, still we are getting the different chemical composition. Second one is the in the 2012 Garg and Wong et al. They have tried to characterize the fly ash with the different calcium oxide content and the ordinary Portland cement using the Raman spectroscopy. So they have characterized the fly ash and the OPC with different LOI values, and like they have not show the D band and G band of the carbon. So what is this D band and G band of the carbon? Like whenever we are characterizing the ash, there is an important difference in the unburnt carbon. And in the unburnt carbon, we generally judge them through the loss on ignition value. But whenever we go for the different ways, like the or for the ashes also, the LOI is not the true representation. It is a very we can say the quick tool by which we can characterize this, but it is not so foolproof. We will see in the upcoming slide that what is the we can say why the LOI is not representing the true values of the carbon. uh, because like the iron oxide, if it is present in the particular we can say the iron metal is present in the ash, it can convert into the oxides, and it may result into the increase in the weight during the loss on ignition test. Loss on ignition test we generally do at 1000 degrees Celsius. We put the sample for half an hour, and we see what is the mass loss in that particular sample, and we generally attribute that particular loss for the evaporation of carbon dioxide, or we can say the loss of the carbon matter. So these are the why industrial ash differs in the characteristics. So in the industry, there is a huge variation in the fuel. If you will go, if you will consider the local industries, or the we can say the small scale industries or medium scale industries, they generally procure the fuel according to the availability and the economic viability of their industry. So whenever they are getting the forest residue, or we can say the wood in the near vicinity, they just go for utilizing them, or sometimes they have to procure the coal. So big industries are generally procuring the coal, but still they are procuring from the different sources based on the rates and the availability. So that is the one of the reason for the variation in the characteristics. Like you can understand that, like if the fuel source is changing, the characteristics may change of the industrial ash. Then the different firing temperature in the different industries, like we will see in the upcoming slide, like how the temperature conditions are different in different condition different industries. So it just create the difference of the characteristics of one industry from the another industry, or we can say that among the different industries there is a changes in the characteristics of the ashes produced in their respective industry. Then the another thing is the different ash collection facility. Like some of the industry they have installed the bag separator, some of the industry they have installed the electrostatic separator. So based on the separation facility, there is a huge variation in the characteristics of fly ash or the industrial ash. So then the like why we are not able to characterize the existing technical standards. So one thing is the complexity of industrial ash, the like the how high amount of the unburned carbon and highly dynamic mineralogical characteristics what we are getting in the industrial ash. And the second thing is the limitations of our existing characterization standards, like the existing standard for the pulverized fuel ash for lime pozzolana mixture application, it specifies the only the qualifying criteria only and recognizes the coal based thermal power plant ash only. And the chemical characterization through the traditional titration methods, if we go for those methods, then it is very consumes the high amount of chemicals, costly chemicals, and time taking also. So those are not so useful, or we can say they're not so quick to we can go for the quick characterization at multiple times. Okay, then the LOI, what I have explained, that that is also unable to comment truly on the unburned carbon. So these are the deficiency of the existing characterization standard what we have in for the ash for the lime pozzolana mixture application. Then this is the another thing, like we have the standard for the bricks IS 12894 2002, but it only specifies the characteristic strand. It lacks in the characteristic based design procedure. What is the meaning of the characteristic based design procedure? Like suppose we have a X quality of the fly ash, then the standard does not tell that what will be the amount we should incorporate in the bricks. So that is the major challenge we are facing. Like we cannot as an industry or a manufacturer, they cannot just follow the standard and they can just design the mix. Like whatever we have you can say the in the concrete we have a particular design procedure. We don't have such procedures for the bricks. So that is another constraint in the existing field. So what we have proposed a characterization methodology for the complex industrial ashes, and we have just done two different types of characterization. One is the micro level characterization of the ashes, and there are some macro level tests. So in the what we have proposed based on the uh, different individual techniques, we understood the limitations and the advantage of that particular technique, and we have proposed a comprehensive methodology for the micro level characterization. We have involved in our characterization four different things, like the ADX spectrum that gives the very good elemental composition but unable to comment on the compounds, well, like we can say, like we can detect the whether the calcium is present or silicon is present in the or oxygen is present, but whether it is a calcium carbonate or whether it is a calcium oxide or whether it is a calcium sulfate, we cannot detect from this EDS spectrum. Secondly, from the XRD pattern, we can detect the crystalline phases very well, but the amorphous phases they may go undetected. So that is another constraint from the XRD patterns. Then second, another thing is the FTIR spectrum we have used as the many of the amorphous phases which are IR active. We can detect from the FTIR, but the amorphous carbon still goes undetected in the FTIR spectrum. So for that we have used the Raman spectrum, and it have the advantage that whatever the IR inactive phases which are Raman active, they we can detect those amorphous phases using the Raman spectroscopy, and additionally we can detect the amorphous carbon detection, whether the LOI is due to the amorphous carbon or it is due to the carbonate, that can easily be identified through the Raman spectrum. Second thing, the macro level test also we have done the LOI, what is the conventional test. That is the limitation is the unable to comment truly about the unburned carbon and the lime reactivity, the pozzolanic property of the for the quantitative index. So these are the different tests what we have used for the macro level and micro level scale, so that we can get the holistic picture of the industrial ash and we can suggest the utilization for the unfat bricks. So we have carried out our study on 6 different industrial ashes. We have collected 2 biomass ash from the local industry like the Om Namkeen and the Sutri Snacks. They are the industries in the Indore. And in the A1 ash, which is the biomass ash, they are using the bio brackets as a fuel, and the firing temperature is at 800 degrees Celsius. The ash collection facility is back filter there, and we have observed the high LOI, almost 60%, 60.38% in the biomass ash A1. Whereas in the A2, we have observed the 23.16% LOI, and the ash collection facility they were using is the dust collector. And you can easily compare that due to the variation of the fuel, how the characteristics of the ash are differing from one industry to another industry. Then we have also taken the coal-based ashes from 3 different industry. One is from beverage industry, one another is from the textile industry, and another is from the graphite electrode manufacturing industry. And from the LOI, you can see like it is varying from the 7.83% to the 12.18%. Then we also considered in our study to compare with these industrial acids to the thermal power plant ash. We collected our one ash from the Sri Singaji thermal power plant Mundi, and we have just they were using the like LOI was observed as a 2.22%. So we have analyzed the XRD patterns of different ashes, and we found that in the A1 ash, sylvite and aphthaltite minerals, then A2 calcite, portlandite and sylvite minerals. Then A3 we have found like A3, A4 and A5 and A6. They are the coal-based ashes. So we have found the quartz, calcium oxide and the anhydrite in the A3 and A5 ashes, and based on the presence of reactive mineral phases, we have commented on its utilization. So I will not go into the details, much details in these things. I'll just tell you these are the mineral phases present. One important thing, like in the A6, although the LOI is very less, but we have found the presence of mullite, and mullite is reported as a inert or we can say non-reactive mineral phase. And this is the major challenge in the power plant ash. Like majority of power plant ash which have the low LOI, but still we are not we can say getting the good lime reactivity because the formation of the mullite. So this is the another challenge what we are facing in the Indian coal ashes. Like what happens like whenever we have the temperature more than 1200 degrees Celsius in the thermal power plant, we generally found the presence of these mullite phases, and it reduces the reactivity. So you will see like although we are getting the low LOI in the A6, still we are not getting the good lime reactivity when we will see the results of macro test. So from here you can conclude directly that the LOI cannot be like the we can say the restricting um, we can say the rest it cannot restrict the utilization of the ash, like although in the codes it is given that the LOI should be less than 5%, but we will see like still the A3, A4 and A5 ashes which are having the more LOI, they are still giving the good strength uh, or we can say good qualitative index when we go for the lime reactivity test. So these are the different FTIR spectrum where we found the different amorphous phases which are not identifiable in the we can say the XRD patterns. You will see the A1 and A2. We have observed the rocking CS2 bonds. Uh, Here we can say that the high LOI values of A1 and A2, these are because of the CS2 bonds present in the ashes, and you can notice that in the A1 we have observed the presence of carbonate also. So that has actually enhances the high LOI value of that particular A1 ash. Okay, so then we have carried out the Raman spectrum. Like in the FTIR also, we could not able to identify whether it is the amorphous carbon present or not. So we have conducted this particular Raman spectrum, and we have observed the D and G band carbon in all the ashes. And what happened like when we have gone through the Raman spectrum of the industrial ashes, we could not able to identify the glassy phase of the matter present in the ash. So what we have done, like we have used a, novel methodology, like we have analyzed the phases after the treating them at 1000 degrees Celsius, and by comparing, you can see like the in A1 ash. Uh, the minerals are not very clear, but when we treated them at 1000 degrees Celsius, we could able to identify the aphthaltite mineral very easily in the treated samples. Similarly, in A2, we could able to identify the portlandite, calcite, and CO bonds in the thermally treated samples. Then in the A3, A4, and A5, in the mainly the A3 and A4, which are the silica-rich ashes, we could not able to identify the minerals in the treated samples due to their high luminescence. The luminescence can be due to the high amorphous silica, or maybe like still the investigations are carried out for this to identify the exact reason behind this luminescence. So in the A5, which is the less silica as compared to A3 and A4, we could able to identify the anhydrite and quartz phase. And all we can say in another manner that due to the high anhydrite component, we can able to identify those in the spectra. So ultimately, due to the presence of inherent minerals, the reactivity of A5 and A3 ash are the high, and the same we have observed through the lime reactivity test. Like we have observed the highest lime reactivity of 8.17 Newton per mm square in the A5 ash, and the second is the A3 ash. And you can see although the very good LOI value A6 ash has, but still the lime reactivity is very less due to the presence of inherent minerals. And then we have also studied the morphology of the different industrial ash, and we found that the irregular shaped ashes, which is like you can see the A3 and A5, they shows the better properties when we go for the lime reactivity. Like in the literature also, the researchers have reported like the whenever we have the angular characteristics of the particles, like it gives the better mechanical properties due to the interlocking effect. And you can note down that like the in the concrete when we are preparing the flowable mix, then we prefer the spherical particles of the ashes. But when we are going for the compressed bricks or like the unfired bricks, as such we do not require the slump flow. We generally use the low moist mix for the casting of the bricks. So as such the angular characteristics of the ashes are not detrimental to the uh, uh, properties of the fly ash bricks. And we can see that the probably the angular characteristics have resulted the better lime reactivity of the particular lime reactivity of the ashes. So these are the key conclusions from this particular part of the study, like a comprehensive characterization methodology comprising the macro level test and micro level characterization techniques being found suitable for the characterization of industrial ashes. And we can get the holistic pictures if we want to utilize that particular ash in the unfired bricks. The second thing is the comprehensive characterization suggested the possible utilization of the industrial ashes A3 and A5 locally in the lime-based fly ash bricks. And industry has really implemented these suggestions, and now they are using those ashes for preparing their fly ash bricks. The second thing is the different stabilizers used to incorporated waste in the unfired bricks. Like there are multiple stabilizers in the market, like the cementitious. Like we can categorize them in the cementitious binders or cementitious stabilizers, then chemical stabilizers, or we can say the other stabilizers, the biostabilizers. So the cement stabilizers are like the cement and lime. We can categorize them, and the chemical stabilizers which is very popular in the like the sodium hydroxide and the sodium silicate. In the research, many researchers they are using these particular chemicals for stabilizing the waste for the unfired bricks. And one of the like researchers, they also use the alginates for stabilizing the waste and prepare the bricks. So these are the different stabilizers which are in use. Then what are the the research objectives we can have, that the optimization of binders, the use of blended binders can be another opportunity. Right now we are just using the cements or lime, or if we are going for the chemical stabilizers, we are not using the cementitious stabilizers in the industry. So in recent literature, it has been seen that the people are trying to use them as a big mixed binder. They are using the cementitious and chemical binders together while preparing the bricks. So that can be a future study area where we can use the blended binders for the optimization. Like the in the chemical binders, there is a cost constraint, and but there are certain advantages like high volume of waste can be utilized, and we can say the uh, in the chemical binders we can get the very good high early strength. So we will see in the next slide like the about the geopolymerization also. So that advantage we have with the chemical stabilizers, but the cost aspect is the major disadvantage with the chemical stabilizer. So people are trying to just use them together to get the optimized binders. Then use of additives. Many people have used different additives just to subsidize the amount of binder. That can be the another branch of that particular stabilizing area. Then the uh, This is the geopolymers which recent researchers are using for the high early strength, and these are the different you can say the type of source material they are trying, like the fly ash, metacholine, endocholine, and the type of activator. Like majority of researchers, they have used sodium silicate or sodium hydroxide, but some of the studies they have also attempted the potassium silicate, potassium hydroxide, sodium carbonate also they have used. Then the amount of activator and the curing condition that can be explored, like the what could be the optimum amount of activator, and what could be the best curing conditions if we are going with the geopolymers. Then these are the different aspects related to mixing strategy. Like we have analyzed the literature and we found that in the mixing sequence, like it is very important in case of the blended mixes and materials with different state. Like if we are mixing the like the wet slurry, wet lime slurry, and we are mixing them with the dry stone dust or the dry fly ash. So the mixing strategy play a very important role. Like if you will directly mix the lime and fly ash, then it may result into the lumps. And if you will not give a proper mixing time, the lumps may go into the bricks and it may deteriorate the performance of the bricks. So the mixing sequence is very important aspect, and in the literature, two-stage mixing sequence is most common. However, there were no study reporting the comparison of the two-stage mixing sequence and the three-stage mixing sequence. So we have done the work over that, and we have found that the two-stage mixing sequence is the better considering for the particular set of the raw materials. The mixing time varies in the literature from the 4 minute to 15 minute, and the mixing equipment like the some in some of the cases like the special mixing equipment required to handle the raw materials based on the characteristics. Like one of the great example is from the SVNIT Surat, where the Professor Raut they have just proposed a specific mixture while handling the for handling the paper mill residue. That is very interesting. Like if you want to go in the detail, you can go for that. Like they have proposed a particular mixture for handling the waste. We also worked on the blending equipment. I will show in the upcoming slide for that. Then what is the two-stage mixing sequence? Like the dry mixing of solids in the first step and the liquid addition and the mixing in the second stage. That is the most common sequence researchers have used while they considering the all the dry materials for the ingredients. However, it varies according to the raw material characteristics. So designing of suitable mixing strategy is a relatively less studied area as compared to the mix optimization. And I will recommend that if someone want to really go into the research related to mixing strategy, they should focus these particular aspects for their research objectives. Then this is the what we have worked on the mixing sequence and the moisture content for the unfired bricks. So these are the different literature. Like in the bricks, we don't have much literature. So I just put the some of the literature where the Hiramat and Yaragal in 2017 they have observed the effect of mixing sequence on the reactor powder concrete, and they observed the better flow properties and better mechanical properties using a four-stage mixing sequence where the diluted super plasticizer is added to the binders only, and the remaining dry ingredients are added at a later stage. So these are specific to that particular we can say the reactive powder concrete. We cannot directly implement that particular outcome for our unfired bricks, but yes, they support for designing the we can say the initial mixing sequences. We can use those literature uh, by just making our observation concerning to our raw materials. Then how at all in 2020 they have observed the effect of mixing sequence of nano silica on hydration and the hardening properties of cement based materials, and they have reported that the compressive strength is closely related to the mixing sequence of the raw materials. And from there we have started our work And although we have started our work before the 2020, but later on we have included this literature while presenting our work. So another thing is related to moisture content, that like Wattenrich et al. In 2009, they have observed the influence of moisture content on compressed bricks, and water content was varied in the range of 15% to 20%, and they found that optimum properties at the highest moisture content. It is to be noted that the bricks were compressed at 25 MPa, similar to the present industrial practices, 17 MPa. Then in another literature from Primerska and Chindasprit, they observed the influence of moisture content on compressed bricks, and they have observed the maximum compressive strength at an intermediate water content in the varied range. I've just put these two, we can say, only two literatures just to show that there is no clarity whether the moisture content should be at a maximum level or it should be intermediate range, because the selection, like the code has not reported any clear cut guidelines like how to select the moisture content while preparing the bricks. So like the guidelines are still awaited from the researchers side, like the manufacturing guidelines for the bricks, but still these are the some of the areas where we have worked out. So it has been noted that the bricks were compressed at much lower hydraulic pressure as compared to the present industrial practices in that particular study. So what we have proposed, we have taken these two different mixing sequences in our present study. In the mixing sequence ones, the we have added the in the stage one the fly ash and the lime, and in stage two, after 45 seconds, we have added the liquid as a second stage addition, and in the third stage we have added the stone dust. Whereas in the mixing sequence 2, we have added the complete dry raw materials as a stage 1 addition, and we mix them for the 90 second, and then in stage 2 we have added the liquid. And these particular two mixing sequences we have compared for the complete moisture range. Like we have chosen the Mr. Kannan, can you just mute yourself?
அந்த அந்த இது அந்த இது இருக்குல்ல ஹெட்செட் இது இருக்குல்ல பிளக் பாயிண்ட் இருக்குல்ல அதுவே 3000 ரூபாய்.
சஞ்சித்,
இப்ப வர போன்ல சார்ஜர் கிடையாது, எதுவுமே எல்லாத்தையும் தூக்கிட்டான் போல இருக்கு. எதுவுமே கிடையாது.
Sanjit, can you
வைவோல அதே மாதிரி தான் போல இருக்கு எல்லாமே. எல்லா போன்லயும் பண்ணிட்டாங்க.
Mr. Kannan, please.
விவோல என்ன வந்திருக்கு? சாம்சங்ல எடுத்துறானே.
So then we have just selected the workable range of moisture content, like below 10% it is unable to bind our raw material composite, and after 15% it shows the bleeding. So we have selected the this particular range from 10% to 15% for our study. It may vary from based on the raw materials, but this is like the same methodology can be implemented for the respective raw materials. Then we have chosen a particular binder ratio based on our compressive strength requirement. Like we have targeted 10 MPa, which is the required compressive strength as per the CPWD norms for the building bricks. So we have chosen these, we have prepared these 10 mixes based on the 5 different moisture content and 2 mixing sequences. And then we have conducted these different tests. So I just put some of the test results, not all in detail. You can refer the article. So we have just observed the compressive strength, microstructure, then dynamic modulus of elasticity, drying shrinkage, impact energy, then bulk density, water absorption, percentage voids, and the fluorescence. So these are the compressive strength results, where we found that the mixing sequence 2 is effective for the better performance of the unfired bricks. And with the increase in the moisture content, there is an increase in the compressive strength in general. And for the Q2 mix, we have observed the highest compressive strength. Then this is the microstructure what we have observed, like in the M1 mix as compared to Q2 mix. In Q2 mix you can see the we observed the strong ITZ, the interfacial transition zone, whereas in the M1 mix we found the weak hydrated phase. So the results observed in the macro test, like the compressive strength test results, they are in good relation with the microstructure observed in the unfired bricks. Then these are the similar trend we have observed for the dynamic modulus of elasticity, and these are the results of drying shrinkage, where we found that the drying shrinkage of the bricks is closely related to the water absorption characteristics of the bricks. And in the low water absorption characteristics, we found the low drying shrinkage, and for the high water absorption characteristics, we found the high drying shrinkage. These are the key conclusions from this particular objective, like the combination of high liquid content and mixing sequence tool. Please note that the high liquid content should not bleed out, like the because if it goes the bleed out, then there may be chances of the binder imbalance, and they may result into the deterioration of the performance. So the high liquid content and mixing sequence too, it should be in the workable range, and there we have reported as an optimum production method for achieving the higher compressive strength of unfired bricks. The bricks made with the mixing sequence to achieve the higher modulus of elasticity due to the better distribution of particles and a homogenized brick matrix. Then the drying shrinkage is closely related with the water absorption value of the brick, and higher water absorption results in the higher values of the drying shrinkage in HLF bricks. This particular work was related to the mixing sequence. We also worked on the mixing equipment, like to design the new mixing equipment for the powdered hydrated line instead of slag line. Like what we have proposed, like in like right now we have a rainy season, so one of the industrial challenge is in the monsoon season they have to stop their production due to the constraint of the moisture content. What happens, like the we in the industry we generally store the materials in the open air, and in the monsoon there is a huge absorption of moisture in the fly ash or stone dust, and whatever the material we are getting from the we can say the supplier, that contains the high amount of moisture, let's say 30% or 40%, and we cannot use like that particular material. Like you have seen in the previous slides, that the optimal moisture content for our raw material we have proposed as the 15%. And if we are getting the inherent moisture content more than 15%, let's say 20 or 30%, we cannot use them directly in the bricks. So what we have suggested that at least what we are using the slag lime, we can remove the moisture of that, and instead of slag lime we can use the hydrated lime. So when we are just changing our raw material from the slurry to the powdered form, we found that the existing mixture is not so there is a need of improvement, we can say, because the roller type pen mixture what you are looking right now in the presentation, they are especially designed for the grinding of the putty, lime putty. Okay, so it is difficult to another thing is why we have selected the powdered hydrated lime, because it is very difficult, like what in the industry in general we just slag the lime and just slag them in the big tanks. We do not have the controlled provision for the hydration of those particular lime. So we have seen that the moisture content is very critical in the previous slide. So we have proposed that to give a controlled quantity of water, we should use the powdered form of the hydroted lime. So now the task is to modify the mixing equipment to incorporate the powdered hydrated lime. So we have just tried to develop the initial design, and we developed in lab prototype of the vertical form. Later we have just converted them to the final product in the horizontal ribbon blender. I'm just playing probably maybe you are able to see the video.
So it is just to demonstrate
like how the initial design we have developed, and then we converted it to the prototype, and then we finally reached to a industry level ribbon blender. However, still the works are going on to optimize the like the RPM of the mixture and the other things, so that the industry can use the particular equipment. If they want, they will shift from the slag line to the powdered line. But it is I just put this particular slide to give you overview, like how much efforts and what are the different aspects we have to look into the things when we want to implement our research directly in the industry. It is just not like we have proposed and we have just done some mechanical or durability properties, and we can propose them to the industry. We have to look after about all the aspects which are relevant, like what I have explained in the earlier slide, like the mixing strategy, then the compaction strategy, then the design mix. All are very important. Then the curing strategy. Suppose we are proposing a waste to implement, and it is increasing the production cycle from 1 month to 3 months. Then there is a no use. Like the industry will not be interested to implement them for their industry. So this is one of the work what we have done. Then another thing is the homogeneity of mix. That is also one of the constraint in the current unfired brick industry. Like we have developed the non-destructive tool for measuring the micro level homogeneity of the mix. Although like at this stage we have just implement, or we can say that we have observed the feasibility of this tool for the dry mixing of the solids, but it can be extended. And research is going on in this field also. Like what is the homogeneity? It is just you can understand with the presence of its constituent elements uniformly throughout the matrix. And I just categorize this in two parts. One is the physical homogeneity and the chemical homogeneity. So physical homogeneity, what we generally observe in the concrete or the our we can say the products, that we observed at the macroscopic scale. And we generally use the physical characteristics like the particle size or optical reflection or color, or we do the test like the UPV, or some density or pore distribution of a resultant matrix. Either we identify based on the particles, or we just do some tests on the resulting matrix. However, the chemical homogeneity is little bit different. We generally interested, or we see it at the microscopic level. Either we go for the elemental composition, what is the distribution of the elements throughout the matrix, or we go for the vibrational characteristics of the chemical bond. So basically we have worked on the chemical homogeneity at a microscopic level. And these are the some of the key literature, like the QT and Das in 2015. They have worked on the homogeneous distribution of filler, and they have checked using the SAM image analysis. It involves the complex sample preparation, cutting and grinding, polishing operations, and vacuum conditions, which is the important, like the vacuum conditions and gold coating for measurement, and a long numerical based image analysis procedure to comment on the homogeneity that is required in that particular case. Secondly, I want to quote another reference by Riolo et al. In 2018. They have found that the Raman spectroscopy can be a tool for the process analysis to determine the end point of the mixing of the pharmaceutical bands. So we have taken the idea from there, and we tried to implement that particular knowledge in our building construction materials. So based on the standard deviation analysis, they found that the Raman spectroscopic data were reported more substantial than the data obtained by the conventional HPLC method, high performance liquid chromatography method. So we have used the Raman spectroscopy to determine the homogeneity of blended mix. So these are the existing ways like the optical image analysis, electrical resistivity measurements. You will see in the different literatures like the rheological performances, gamma ray attenuation, UPV, X-ray computed tomography, and C-lab. These are the different methods which measure only the physical homogeneity. However, there are certain methods for the chemical homogeneity also, like the scan electron microscope, SAM images along with the EDS, we generally use for the chemical homogeneity. But still, it requires the sample preparation and the vacuum condition. And specifically, when we are going for the unfired bricks, it takes hours to achieve the vacuum condition in case of porous. Very difficult to take the what I have used the SAM and it takes hours to get the vacuum conditions and difficult to take the SAM images. So the challenge was we want to measure the chemical homogeneity and we want to select or we want to develop such a tool which should be workable in the non-vacuum conditions, because in the vacuum condition it is taking so much time. So what we have done, we have used the Raman spectroscopy. We have presented a three-stage methodology which can be used for a similar application. Like you can also implement this particular methodology for your respective material. What we have done in the first stage, we identify the characteristic peaks in the separate heaps, and in the second stage we check the mutual interference at common boundary, and in third stage we develop the Raman area map in the mixed form. So these are the three stages. Like in the first stage we have taken the spectra in the isolation, and then we try to just make the bring them together at a common boundary, so that we can take the spectra of individual material and we can check whether the spectra of one particular material is inferencing the spectra of another or not. And in third stage we actually blend them together, and we just taken the spectra of the blended material. So what we have found, like in the first stage we could able to identify the individual peaks of individual ingredient. We have taken the two stone waves. One is the Dolphu stone waves, another is the Jaisalmer stone waves, and we have identified the characteristic peak and selected this representative characteristic peak of the S1 as 463 centimeter inverse and 1086 centimeter inverse for the S2 stone waves. And you can see the similar observation in the maps. You can identify like how the boundary like the two different materials are changing. Then these are the like we have made a common boundary and we have taken the line measurement, and you can see like at the upper side you can identify one material, and at bottom side you can identify the another material. Like the top one is the S1 and the bottom one is S2. Then we have blend them, and we found that we could able to identify the individual ingredient in the image form. Like the alpha is the showing the calcite rich region, and beta is showing the silica rich region, and in the C and D image you can see the filtered image. And what in the initial slide I have explained, like if we could able to identify the individual gradient at the microscopic level, we can say that if they both the ingredients are present, the mixing is homogeneous. So we have taken the different multiple images at different locations, and based on the that particular locations, we in all the particular images we found the presence of both the materials, and we could identify both the materials at the microscopy level. And then we have commented that it can be a tool for measuring the homogeneity of matrix. However, the quantitative index can be developed further for the quantitative analysis. Till now we have worked on the qualitative analysis of the homogeneity. So our Raman map, we can conclude that a Raman map very clearly identifies the material at a micro level, and which are not otherwise unidentifiable optically. You have seen in the first A image, that is the optical image, and we could not able to identify like which material is present at which place. So the three-stage experimentation performed using the two constituents well demonstrated the efficacy of the developed homogeneity tool for the dry blended mix. However, it can be further extended to the wet blended mix. So these are the other aspects related to compaction method. Like in the literature, these are the three different methods, and most common in the brick stabilized with the cementitious binder is the compression technology. Then liquid content in the mix is the another important aspect we have seen in the previous slides. Then rheology of the mix, that is also important, especially in the self compaction mixes. And the compaction parameters like the compaction rate, what is the compaction pressure in case of compression, then what is the compaction duration. In some of the literature, they have worked on the long compaction duration also, up to like certain minutes. However, in the industry, we generally go for the 10-second compression. Then what is the benefit of compression? Like it gives the instant demolding, then high density of the bricks, and the low liquid content is required. Then however, it varies according to raw material. I have already explained that. Then the approach to select the suitable water content varies significantly in the literature, for which we have worked on. I have explained in the previous slides. And the selection of suitable compaction method to incorporate the waste is relatively less studied as compared to mix optimization. So what we have done, we have just taken a in the researchers, what they have done, they just use the particular waste and they have prepared by a particular compaction method, but they have not really compared the different compaction methods, and they have not commented on the optimized compaction way. So that can be another very interesting area for the research, where the people can work on the further the optimum way of the compaction for the industrial scale implementation of a particular waste. Then these are the different aspects of the curing conditions, like the curing medium, air, water, and hybrid curing are trending nowadays. Then the curing age 1 day to 90 days. And then these are the curing parameters: temperature, humidity, pressure. So hybrid curing is nothing but using the different curing mediums for varying curing duration. Let's say, like suppose for first 4 hours, they have just put in the ambient air, and after that they have put the wet cloth for 7 days, and then they have poured in the water for next 21 days. So that can be considered as a hybrid curing method. So different curing parameters we have to optimize for the different stage of curing. However, it varies according to the stabilizers what we are using, whether it is a geopolymer or it is a cementitious binder or it is a bioalginate. So based on that chemical reactions, we have to select the curing conditions. However, the low cost curing conditions for different waste incorporated bricks are to be designed for the objective of high early age strength and the lower curing age of the targeted strength. Basically, this should be the target for designing curing conditions. These are the other concerns related to comparative analysis of the different waste. So waste is not waste for the manufacturers in Indian scenario. What I have explained earlier, the cost of waste procurement include the loading, unloading, and transportation by weight. Even if it is available free of cost, the manufacturer has to bear that particular cost. The majority of freight transportation vehicles are diesel based, non-renewable, and fuel cost is very high. The varying distance of procurement source that also affect the cost of the waste. Then what should be the ideal way to compare the different waste? Suppose a waste is available just nearby the industry in the near vicinity, and another waste is at 300 kilometer from that particular we can say that particular manufacturing facility. So measurement of unit for sale of the bricks is number of bricks for specified size, means it's a particular volume. Okay, so if we are incorporating any waste, we should be concerned about the volume of the waste, not the weight of the waste. Let's say suppose particular waste is occupying a more volume in the brick matrix, then at the same cost, that can have a relatively better feasibility, better economic feasibility in the bricks. So replacing of waste by weight also change the overall weight of the brick depending on the specific volume of waste. That also we have to consider while comparing the different waste. So waste are to be compared based on their volumetric cost rather than the cost by weight. It is very important when we go for the industrial implementation. It is a very important aspect. So this, from where we have started, like these are the two different products in the market. So just for the comparison, like what is the, like the fired bricks are the non-eco-friendly, they are heavier in weight, lower compressive strength, more porous and high water absorption, but they have a very auspicious red color. And in Indian scenario, when you go in the market, consumer market, in the villages, the manufacturers are facing very huge challenges to put the waste incorporated gray colored fly ash bricks in the Indian traditional market, because the fly ash bricks are grey in color, although they have eco-friendly, lighter in weight, high compressive strength, less porous and low water absorption. Still, due to the gray color, they are facing the challenges to put the market. And this is the typical example, like the how the social acceptance is very important to make the feasible. However, due to the government enforcement guidelines in many of the project, we are using the fly ash bricks in many of the projects, but still the, like if the mass population will not accepting the product, then it will be a challenge. So we have worked on the aesthetics, and I'll just give you a brief, like how the aesthetics are important, and what in the ancient days we are like why we have chosen the stone waste to incorporated the for the improvement of the bricks. So in the ancient durable structures, probably you have seen the forts. Then the this is the picture of Taj Mahal, and these are the other buildings. Like in the ancient time, we generally use the stones. But what happens? Like why we have shifted from the stones to bricks? So what happens? Like also you have seen the religious places. These are the different religious places from the stones, so they are durable after so many centuries. So it is very well known that the stones are more durable. But why we have shifted from the that particular like the stones to the bricks, that we should understood. These are the different pictures of the stones, and these are the different structures of the brick built houses. So while there is a shift in the construction technology, like from the load bearing structures, we have shifted to the framed structures, and by the change in the technology, the brick are nowadays are more for the partition walls, or we can say the filler walls. So the durability is the still the important aspect. So what we have done, when we are using the bricks, we generally use the plaster and paint for the houses, and sometime based on the availability of budget, we also use the stone cladding. So from there we strike out, like why shouldn't we improve the aesthetics of the bricks in such a way, so that it should be a stone at the top of the layer of the brick. So these are the key challenges which we have considered. One is the aesthetics of the unfired bricks. The second is the search of a low cost material which fit into the budget of the brick mixes, typically in the range of 1 to 1.5 per kg. Then economic competitiveness of the proposed solution in the existing product range, and the manufacturing feasibility of the proposed solution in the existing industrial setup. So these are the key challenges we have considered in this particular area. And how to improve the aesthetics of unfired bricks and low cost maintaining its sustainability. So we have used the stone waste. These are the reasons for, or we can say motivation for using the stone waste. Like one is the stone waste are the inherent color, they have the inherent color. The second thing is the stone waste are originated from durable stones, And the third thing is the availability of dimensional stone waste in the huge quantity. So we have selected 4 different stone waste from the Rajasthan area, and we have analyzed the morphology, and we found the angular particles which is very well suitable for the our fly ash bricks. So we have used the geopolymer mortars, and we have using the different solid stone waste, we have prepared different colored mortars, and we found that all the silica rich and calcium rich, although the calcium rich stone waste, which is the mix M3, M4 and M5, they are giving the better strength with the color aesthetics. Although the M2 is also qualifying for the 10 Newton per mm square strength. So these are the different bricks we have produced. Like the one is the fired clay bricks, and another is the unfired fly ash clay bricks. And we have produced this hybrid, we can say the bi-layered colored bricks using the stone waste. What we have done for to improve the economic viability, we have used the colored mortar up to a certain thickness, and the bottom layer of the brick we have kept similar to the fly ash bricks, just to enhance the aesthetics of the product. So this is the cost analysis of 10 mm thick top layer mortar, and we found that there is a increase in like the cost of this particular layer is the 1.616, and there is a effective increase in the cost of rupees 1.31. But as you have seen in the last slide, like we do not require the mortar and the paint, so there is a cost saving of almost 2.49 rupees when we compare the overall cost of the brick using these particular bricks. This is the manufacturing methodology we have proposed for producing the bi-layer bricks. We will see the actual demonstration also in the bricks. Like in the first step, what we do, we just bring the particular punch to an intermediate level and fill the first layer material, and then we just move down to create the additional space for the second loose fill layer. Although we can change the we can say the in the first layer we can put the normal mortar, and in the second layer we can put the colored mortar. There is no difference in that. In the third step, what we do, we just lock the surface from the top and we compress from the bottom, and then in the fourth step we eject the colored bricks from the mold. So although this particular process we have proposed for the bottom press manufacturing machines, although it can be developed for the rotating machines, and this we have created for the manual setup. With the help of additional feeder, we can produce in the automatic manner also. So these are the actual bricks what we have proposed in the laboratory scale, and we will see in the demonstration also. These are the potential application area for the developed product, like we can use as a facade material. These are the key takeaway, like the manufacturing of bi-layered bricks is feasible in the conventional plant used for the manufacturing single layered bricks with minor alterations, and the bi-layered bricks are found to be economically viable. Use of proposed bi-layered bricks result in a net saving of rupees 2.49 per brick surface of 90 mm by 190 mm, amounting to a cost saving of the 35%. So there are opportunities for the industries for the technology transfer of the developed product, and then opportunity for the research collaboration. If someone want to collaborate in the field of the gainful utilization of waste in pre-manufactured products, that can be done very easily. These are the some of the glimpse of the research facility available at IIT Indore related to pre-manufactured products. We have the industrial plants of the paver block and unfired bricks, and we have complete testing facilities for all the 6 categories of the product. Like if you categorize them as a compressed mortar, vibro mortar, or self-compacting mortar, and compressed concrete, vibro concrete, and self-compacting concrete, we have all the 6 types of facilities at IIT Indore. Then these are the some of the news cuttings which we have got the recognition from the different newspapers. At the end, I just want to acknowledge my supervisor at IIT Indore, Professor Sandeep Chaudhary, for guiding me for this wonderful work. Then Dr. Rajesh Kumar sir, he's from Physics Department at IIT Indore. Dr. Ankur Miglani sir from uh, Mechanical Department. He has put insights for the many of the research aspects. Then Professor Yonglu and Hon Kian Chai, they are from the University of Edinburgh. Professor Balatsa Novak, he is from University of Stuttgart. Professor Lato Pejo and Professor Marni Sereda and Dr. Vasik, they are from Serbia and the Brazil. They are the collaborators for the different research publications. Dr. Salman Siddiqui and Mr. Devesh Kumar and Mr. Ravi Sharma, they are the collaborators in the different publications. And I also want to acknowledge the different institute and agencies uh, for which we have taken the support for the testing and time to time feedback for our developed products like the SIC IIT Indore, SAF IIT Roorkee, MRC MNIT Jaipur. Then Messrs. Abhishek Briggs, they have wonderfully contributed for the development of those products. Then Flyers Brick Manufacturers Cooperative Society Limited Indore and special thanks to the members of MedLab IIT Indore for supporting me time to time for this research work. So
Dr.